And thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina Marshall from Akrivia Health. I'm joined with two of my colleagues, Brandy Coote and Dr. Benjamin Fell. Brandy, could you tell me, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing clinical trials today?
The problem with clinical trials is they take an incredible amount of time to set up and an incredible amount of time to set up well. They are incredibly expensive. And if you think about it, what we're trying to do with a clinical trial protocol is develop one protocol, one methodology that needs to fit in every country in the world. And of course, we know that healthcare systems are not set up in the same way. Some are free and some require people to pay for the access to that care. So it can be incredibly difficult for a company to write a protocol that will suit all patient pathways that you might see in every country in the world. Then once you've come over those hurdles, being able to set up a clinical trial in different markets requires different levels of governance, different levels of security, and different ethical considerations. You then have to look at each individual market and talk about trial feasibility, site selection, whether or not the sites that you've chosen that you'd like to work with, based either on their availability of patient cohort to increase that diversity in your clinical trial. They're incredibly difficult pieces of work and to coordinate and implement.
Can you tell me, how can we really utilize data and data science to help accelerate clinical trials?
One of the major challenges, probably the biggest challenge in the psychiatric and neurodegenerative drug development space, is the complexity, the variability of the diseases, the diagnoses that exist in that space. Schizophrenia, dementia, depression, these are not monolithic, narrowly defined conditions. They are collections of syndromes, collections of symptoms that co-occur, that have certain common traits, which means that targeting a treatment, targeting a new drug at that population, at that disease, is incredibly challenging. Data like ours has the breadth to capture sufficiently large numbers of patients with the same phenotype, with the same disease profile. And that information, if it can be extracted and structured into a accessible format, is what will allow a pharmaceutical organization, a CRO, to identify patients with a precise disease presentation, and ultimately to recruit those patients into a trial for a precisely targeted treatment.
How can we help reduce bias in clinical trials?
One thing we can do is provide access to a relatively open and accessible healthcare system in the form of the NHS. Healthcare in the UK is free, and that means that some of the significant blockers to access that exist in other countries are not present for the data that we provide. It provides as accurate and complete a picture as you could hope to find over the whole population of patients within a given healthcare organization. It provides very good structured information about their demographics, which is crucial. And it also provides very good information about the treatment pathways, the care that patients have received, referrals, admissions, time between clinical contacts, highly relevant data points. And it allows trial organizations, pharmaceutical companies, to account for those fundamental biases in their recruitment strategies. So access to visibility over the capacity to query these relevant kind of bias data points lets you design a trial protocol that can oversample underrepresented groups or can track the patients with their consent once you've recruited them into the trial to understand, what version of the healthcare system they're experiencing.
Brandy, how important is collaboration when it comes to the success of clinical trials? Can one organisation truly do it all on their own?
No one organization can do what we've described here today. What we are very uniquely positioned at Akrivia Health to do is to impact many time points throughout that life cycle of a clinical trial. And from a research delivery network perspective, for example, what we're able to do is work collaboratively, not only with our healthcare organizations around the UK, but also with our sponsors and our industry partners. We work across that network to coordinate capabilities to make sure that we're putting the right trials in the right organizations at the right time. And that is just one example of how many different organizations are working together to enhance and really optimize clinical trial delivery, certainly here in the UK.
What we have at Akrivia is a position centrally so that we can bring together all these organizations with their own expertise and build a network that lets us effectively navigate this kind of complex problem space, ultimately to make for more efficient, more effective clinical trials and fundamentally to generate better outcomes for patients.